Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers with attorney Stephen Jessup, and we're going to talk about one of Stephen's resolved cases, which we were always happy to do this, and this was with New York Life. So if you can tell us a little bit about this case and what your strategy was, and then we'll provide some tips for people so they can learn some techniques to help avoid a denial or help them in their appeal if they've been denied by New York Life.
Yeah, so on this one, this was a client of mine who at the age of 62, went out on disability. He worked for a large medical company, Fresenius. He was like a territorial manager, sales manager, covered a large swath of the United States. He went out initially, chronic pain related things. He had neck, back, SI joint issues and ended up having fusions on all three. So very serious, legitimate, complaints and objective medical evidence to support it. And given the nature of his job and having to travel a lot and all that type of stuff, it just became too much, especially as he got older. So like I said, at age 62, he filed the claim, for short-term disability first. That was approved. The long-term disability was approved, shortly thereafter. Then Social Security was approved. So, normally, you and I, if we speak to someone and they're on short-term, long-term's approved, they're in their 60s, Social Security's been approved. Generally speaking, if they have good objective medical evidence, the case is going to be somewhat secure. The only potential, hiccup that could happen would be at the 24-month change in definition from own to any occupation. So this was a client that I'd spoken to on several occasions prior to him hiring us, but when he ended up, just prior to the denial, and this technique New York Life does like to use. I guess you could say to their credit to some extent, they denied him about 4 or 5 months to the change in definition, so it gave us a little bit of breathing room to kind of get the appeal in and ready. But it was a situation at the age of 64. They're getting this idea that he can go back to some type of work. They'd started off with internal medical reviews and then culminated in sending him to an independent medical evaluation prior to the denial. About, I think it was like 7 days after the IME is when he got notice that they were denying his claim into the any occupation period.
And how long was the policy going to pay him until?
The policy was at the time of the denial was only going to pay him until like 66, so only like another 2 years. It's one of those situations where you file disability past a certain point in time, they pay you X amount. So we're not talking a long period. Now, granted, yes, because of his benefit amount from his pre-disability earnings and stuff, it's a good benefit, but nothing that would necessarily raise a red flag at his going to be a huge financial.
How much was the benefit amount approximately?
His benefit amount was approximately $4,000 a month after offsets.
Well, $4,000 a month. I mean, it's not a super high benefit. It's not low, but it's certainly toward closer to really the average claim. So it's kind of, people would think, oh my gosh, at 64 years old, after they agreed he was disabled for about 18 months or so, and then they thought he got better?
He got better despite cervical fusion, a lumbar fusion, and his SI joint being fused. 3 major surgeries.
It's crazy how one person can look at that from the company. And so initially when they denied it, you said they relied on an IME exam?
Correct.
So what does that mean compared to how New York Life usually denies claims?
Normally they just have your file reviewed by, maybe they start with an in-house nurse case manager, and then if there's an opinion that, there may not be something here, a director with inside the company, and then sometimes an outside, they hire an outside company to have a doctor review it. So generally it's just file reviews. They don't typically, put eyes on you or have you examined.
So this doctor saw our client, had him do, what was the extent of the exam from what you know?
Well, what we argued, especially after seeing the report, it's almost like, and I think a lot of people have independent medical evaluations experiences. It's almost like starting treatment with a new doctor, right? So they go in, they test reflexes, they do this and that, but there's no actual legitimate testing of any sort to see what your functional abilities are.
Right.
It's kind of cursory, and then, the doctors in their infinite wisdom are able to extrapolate, from a 15-minute appointment what you're capable of, and that's what happened here. And one of the interesting things when we did, get the claim file and we get a copy of that report is, New York Life did take quite a few liberties in their interpretation of the report as well. Once we really kind of dove into it and dug into it, you see that some of the restrictions with regards to sitting, some standing requirements, certain things that the Department of Labor would require to hit sedentary work ability wasn't met. So we did have some inroads to argue that the IME was actually supportive of disability. Now, New York Life is going to interpret it the way they want to interpret it, thus the denial, but we at least did have some stuff. So it wasn't like this doctor was saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, which we've seen. He was giving restrictions and limitations, and I think, it was more, even though I don't agree with his findings, the artwork of the doctors at New York Life who kind of molded it into the opinions that they needed.
So once New York Life got the IME report back, and from your investigation of the claim file, which you get once the claimant's denied and you request a copy from New York Life, did you see that they had sent the IME report up to a in-house doctor?
They had the initial doctor who had said, recommended, found, and they recommended an IME. It went back to him, and he's like, oh, well, look, it supports my opinion of, ability to do sedentary work, and their vocational, rehabilitation expert had jobs identified.
So the interpretation in favor of New York Life denying the claim was done by an in-house employed New York Life doctor.
Yep, that's my assessment.
And would you consider that to be an independent doctor?
Well, no. It's always an inherent conflict of interest. I mean, so many insurance companies only use in-house doctors. It's pretty hard to say you're getting a fair shake when it's an employee of the company.
So what was your strategy then once you found out their entire basis for denying the claim?
First and foremost, we sometimes ad nauseum discuss how important they can be, but functional capacity evaluations, because they're really trying to strip it down to physical ability. Even in the alternate occupations they say you can do, they don't ever consider the cognitive demands and all that stuff. They're really looking at the physical. And, this guy had a lot of issues. There was a lot of issues. And at the age of 64, I'm like, functional capacity evaluation is probably going to, do us quite a bit of good. This client was located in Texas, and there's a therapist I've worked with on multiple occasions who's amazing at doing it. So, we had him undergo testing.
It's as you were talking about this, I remember when this potential client contacted us through an email request through a free consultation on our website, and I looked at it, and then I sent it to you because he gave us kind of a detailed thing, and I said, I can't believe this is 64, that New York Life cut him off, and he said he had 3 surgeries. I go, they must have him doing something crazy, something on video. We've had people who are 64, they travel, they coach a sport, or they're competitive in judo, or
yeah, we've had that.
Yeah, something like, we've seen everything. But was there anything here? Was there some smoking gun video where you were like, I can see where they are at?
Nothing. No video surveillance, no social media searches. His doctor didn't mess up on anything. This is one and kind of related and unrelated at the same time. Just yesterday I spoke to someone who called in whose claim was denied by New York Life, and this person works for State Farm as an insurance, claims manager. So she's like, I understand the business of insurance. She's like, I felt like this lady did nothing in trying to review or understand what was going on with my medical and my condition. And I told her that my personal opinion that sometimes happens is that, especially, this is New York Life, used to be Cigna. The employees are generally, for former Cigna or now New York Life, it's like they're so inundated that they do the bare minimum a lot of times, and then they deny it. And it's like, well, it's off my desk now. It's going to go to appeals department. So it's one less thing I have to worry about. So, I don't want to try to read into anyone's motives, but sometimes you do get these head scratchers. I would say at least they sent them to an IME, so they were,
right,
above the, what we normally see, but it still was one of those ones that just didn't make a lot of sense.
But the inherent conflict is even greater because these are ERISA-governed policies, and the claims administrator at New York Life is supposed to have a fiduciary duty to the plan participants. The claimant is a plan participant, which means the person who's reviewing the claim is supposed to have an obligation to treat that claim participant fairly. However, it seems like the people at Cigna, who are supposed to be the fiduciary to the claimant, are erring on the side of protecting New York Life.
I would agree.
And not protecting the claimant. So it's like the ultimate conflict of interest. We already know there's a conflict of interest, but from something like this, it's like, is this the new regime now at New York Life, now that this transition's about 2 years old, where are they being told off the record, because we've never seen it written in any documents, but if in doubt, deny, whereas it should be if in doubt, approve?
If we even think about 2017 when it was Cigna still, in that regulatory settlement agreement, right? For the way that they were reviewing claims.
Right, they got beat up badly.
I think what they've done is they've taken the guidelines, for their punishment as to what they need to do to review a claim, and they do the bare minimum. And I feel like if they feel like they can check enough of the boxes, they'll go ahead and deny. That's why I always tell people, I think one of the big takeaways is, I've dealt with claims managers who are great, that are really, really good, and I think they do a great job in trying to get claims approved. But I've dealt with plenty that just don't care. They're not your friend, right? They're not in the business of helping you. They're not going to help try to prove your disability. That's on you to prove your disability. And that, I think that's kind of what happened here in a way. This one, I was shocked when it was denied.
Yeah, I was shocked when it came in.
It was a surprising one. That thankfully on the appeal, and even then the appeal process wasn't a smooth process. As we submitted, and you and I did a video not too long ago with New York Life, where I had to do the same thing, where right before the expiration of their 45-day extension, they said, hey, we need another 45 days. We're waiting on medical and vocational to come back, right? So we just tabulate when that time frame's up. About just a handful of days prior to the expiration of the extension, we get a status letter. Oh, we're still reviewing. We'll have an answer to you within the next 30 days. And I'm like, well, I'm not waiting anymore. So I spoke with the client. I told them, the importance now, if we, file a lawsuit, what's going to help with regards to legal standards like that. And I said, listen, this isn't the first time I've done this with New York Life or Cigna, this conglomerate, if you will. It's kind of the all in the same. So we filed a lawsuit. I told the claims manager, the appeal manager, I'm like, you can certainly review it. I've already filed a lawsuit.
Right.
And then it was just about 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed that I was contacted by outside counsel that usually represents them, that advised me, hey, here's the award letter. They've just reapproved the claim. So I don't know. I like to think that the appeal was strong enough on its own, but I'm sure having a lawsuit pending also was a good leverage point to light a fire and let them know you're not going to, you mean business.
Right. Well, it was still a lot of work had to be done to get to a result that should have never happened. And many people would look at this claim and say, wow, it's a really challenging ERISA claim, more challenging when they do an IME exam. But when you have the experience and you can tear through it and look at it and see that they manipulated it as they do, and then get additional information, whether it's a functional capacity exam, a vocational consultant, and going back to his doctors, which all of his doctors are very supportive. But it's a lot of work to coordinate and do all this, and it's very difficult for claimants to do it on their own. Obviously, and as much as New York Life would love for them to do it on their own, you really have to know how to do this to get it done right. So congrats, you got this done. Hopefully with the next 6 months of benefits that are left,
they'll leave them alone.
They'll leave them alone, likely they will. So if you're someone out there who has a New York Life long-term disability policy, feel free to reach out to Stephen, myself, any of our lawyers. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we always provide a free initial phone consultation. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.